You have come here tonight, perhaps without knowing why, drawn by a quiet necessity, as if something deep within you has decided it is time to listen. The mind often pretends to be sovereign, to rule the empire of our existence with its words, its arguments, its images of order, but there is an older ruler, one that predates the spoken word and remembers truths long before reason learned to weave them into sentences. It is the body. The body is not a machine for carrying the mind. The body is the oldest archive of the soul. It remembers what the mind has denied, forgotten, or even betrayed. Many of you who identify as empaths already know this in your bones. You sense the tension in a room before a word has been spoken. You feel the heaviness in another's chest, as if it were your own. You wake in the night with aches or anxieties that are not strictly yours, and yet your rational mind will attempt to dismiss it, will tell you that you are overreacting, imagining, exaggerating. The psyche is endlessly clever in its defenses, but the body does not lie. The empath's body carries the burden of what consciousness is unwilling to face. When I speak of somatic boundaries, I do not mean fences erected in the outer world. I mean the invisible thresholds within you that determine whether you inhabit your own life or whether you surrender it to the unconscious demands of others. A boundary is not a wall, but a living membrane, as permeable as skin, capable of both contact and separation. For the empath, this membrane is often too thin, too porous, too willing to absorb what belongs to others. You become a vessel for another's grief, another's anger, another's secret shame. And when the mind insists on harmony, when it says, I must keep the peace, I must keep loving, I must keep serving, the body protests. It trembles, it aches, it grows ill. I once said that the body is the shadow of the soul. If this is so, then the empath's body is doubly shadowed. It not only contains your own unlived life, but also becomes the theater where the unlived lives of others enact their hidden dramas. Have you noticed how often the empath suffers from inexplicable fatigue, digestive pains, migraines, or skin conditions? These are not simply medical curiosities. They are symbols. They are the voice of the unconscious calling through the soma, saying, you have carried what was never yours to carry. Let me take you into a dream. For dreams are the royal road into the deep structures of the psyche. Imagine a woman walking through a forest at night. She holds a lantern, but its light is dim. Behind her trail, a group of figures, faceless, silent, yet heavy with presence. They cling to her cloak, they pull at her steps. The woman does not turn, for she fears what she might see. Instead, she whispers to herself, I must keep moving. I must keep the peace. I must bring them all to safety. But her body slows. Her knees weaken. At last she falls upon the earth, and the figures step over her, vanishing into the trees. Only then does she realize she has never seen her own face in the lantern's glow. This is the dream of the empath. The faceless figures are the unowned emotions of others. The lantern is the fragile ego trying to make sense of overwhelming psychic currents. The body collapsing is the truth when you deny your own face, your own life. Your soma will not permit the deception indefinitely. It will fall to the ground to remind you, you too are flesh, you too are soul, you too must live your own existence. The boundary, then, is not a cruel rejection of the other. It is an act of reverence for the archetypal law of individuation. Individuation demands that each soul must live its own destiny, bear its own cross, descend into its own depths. When the empath interferes, when you take upon yourself the pain that is not yours, you rob the other of the chance to encounter their own shadow. You become the scapegoat, the sacrificial vessel. Your suffering may feel noble, even Christ-like, but often it is unconscious complicity. The archetype of the Savior is powerful, but when lived without awareness, it devours the carrier. Consider how many myths tell of the healer who becomes wounded, the Savior who descends into death. Chiron, the wise centaur, wounded eternally, or Prometheus, bound and tormented for bringing fire to humanity. The empath is caught in this same archetypal pattern. You feel compelled to carry what burns in others, and in so doing, you suffer endlessly. But myth also teaches that the wound is not only a curse, it is a doorway. To acknowledge that the body remembers this is to step into the mystery where suffering becomes transformation. You may ask, how do we know when what we carry belongs to us or to another? The answer is really simple. The unconscious does not mark possessions with name tags, but the body whispers clues. When an emotion arises suddenly, disproportionate to the event, when a heaviness floods you in another's presence, when you wake with an unexplainable dread after listening to someone's story, pause. Ask the body, is this mine, or is this the echo of another? The mind may rationalize, but the body will give you sensation, contraction, nausea, trembling, or release. To learn the somatic language is to reclaim your boundaries, yet beware, for denial is subtle. The empath may say, I am only compassionate, I am only caring, I am only sensitive, but often this is a mask. Underneath lies fear, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being unloved. If you do not carry the other's burdens, thus the body carries what the mind denies. Your stomach holds the anger you will not speak. Your shoulders bend beneath the guilt you cannot name. Your skin erupts with the shame you have absorbed but never questioned. Every symptom is a symbol, every ache a message. In analysis, I witnessed patients whose migraines ceased when they learned to refuse the manipulations of their families. I saw rashes disappear when a woman dared to say no to her lover's endless demands. The unconscious does not rest until truth is lived in the body. For the empath, the path of healing is not to stop feeling, but to learn discernment. Compassion must be married to wisdom. Love must be wed to boundary. Otherwise, Love degenerates into self-betrayal, and compassion into quiet martyrdom. The archetype of the mother is instructive here. The great mother nourishes, but she also devours. She holds the child close, but she must also let the child go. The empath who always nourishes becomes the devouring mother, swallowing the individuality of others by carrying what should be theirs. True maternal love knows when to step back, to let the child fall, to let the other suffer the necessary pain of growth. This same archetypal truth must guide you in your relationships. You may recall that I spoke often of the shadow. The empath's shadow is not cruelty or indifference. It is rage. It is the raw instinct that says, enough, this is mine and that is yours. Because you fear this instinct, you repress it, you deny it, you call it selfish, unspiritual, unloving, but the shadow will not disappear. It will erupt in the body as illness, or in relationships as sudden outbursts, or in dreams as violent figures demanding recognition. The task is not to suppress the shadow, but to integrate it, to say, I too am capable of anger. I too must protect my life. I too have the right to be whole. The somatic boundary is therefore not merely a psychological technique. It is a sacred act of individuation to tell your body, I will listen. I will no longer deny your signals. I will no longer betray your wisdom that is initiation. For the empath, the initiation is often painful. It feels like abandoning love, like betraying your mission of healing. But in truth, it is the opposite. Only when you live within your own soma, only when you honor your own boundaries, can you offer authentic love. Otherwise, your gift becomes poisoned with resentment, exhaustion, and unspoken demands. You see, the unconscious of the other recognizes when you carry their burden. They may not say it aloud, but they sense it. They sense your willingness to absorb, and they exploit it unconsciously. Thus, a secret collusion is formed. The wounded and the empath locked in a dance of projection and absorption. To break this dance is to break a spell. It is to say, I return to you what is yours. I carry only what is mine. I will meet you soul to soul, not body to body, and yet do not imagine that the task is once and done. It is a lifelong dialogue, each encounter, each relationship, each dream will test your boundaries anew. The empath's path is not to escape sensitivity, but to sanctify it. To feel deeply is a gift of the soul, but without boundary, the gift becomes a curse. With boundary, it becomes medicine, not only for you, but for those around you. You may wonder why the empath's body speaks so loudly while the mind insists on silence. The reason is that the psyche seeks wholeness. What you deny in thought does not vanish. It is driven into the depths of the unconscious. And from there, it emerges through the body. The body becomes the living parchment upon which the unconscious writes its forgotten truths. Every migraine, every fluttering heartbeat, every inexplicable nausea is a letter in this hidden script. If you listen carefully, you will find that the body is speaking the language of archetypes. Consider the dreamer who comes into analysis with chronic chest pains. Medical doctors have found no cause. She dreams repeatedly of being pressed beneath the ocean, her ribs breaking, her breath stolen. When we explore her life, we discover she has spent years caring for a partner who is perpetually drowning in his own despair. She cannot breathe because she has denied her own need for air. Her soma carries the message her mind refuses to accept, that love without boundary is suffocation. Once she acknowledges this truth, her chest pain begins to subside. You see, the body always remembers the boundaries you have failed to draw. This is why I tell you, if you are an empath, you must become a student of your own soma, not merely its pleasures, but its tensions, its resistances, its collapses. When your shoulders ache, ask yourself, whose weight am I carrying? When your stomach knots, inquire, what anger have I swallowed that was not mine? When fatigue overtakes you, ask, where have I drained my life, forced to nourish what is not mine to feed? In each answer, you will find the seed of your individuation. Do not imagine that this path is free of terror. To set boundaries for the first time feels like betrayal. It feels like murder, like killing the sacred bond that ties you to the other. That is why so many empaths collapse into illness before they awaken. The unconscious chooses the body to dramatize what you cannot yet enact consciously. If you will not say no, your immune system will. If you will not rest, your nervous system will. If you will not release the burdens of others, your organs will rebel. The body is ruthless in its devotion to the truth. The archetype of the wounded healer is crucial here. You who feel everything are destined to know the wound, for without the wound there is no wisdom. But you must not confuse the wound with your identity. Too many empaths become prisoners of their wounds, believing that to suffer endlessly is their role. The true healer is one who transforms the wound into medicine, who says, I will not deny the scar, but I will not live as the scar alone. The empath must learn to walk the razor's edge open enough to feel the currents of the collective unconscious, strong enough to return them without becoming consumed. Let us look again into myth. Think of Persephone, carried into the underworld. She ate the seeds of pomegranate, and thus she could never return fully to the world of light. She must live part of her existence in shadow. So it is with the empath. You are called into the underworld of another's pain. You taste it, you embody it, but you must return, you must ascend. If you remain in the darkness forever, you will forget the sun. The boundary is the path back. It is the rope that pulls you up from Hades into the day. Perhaps you are asking, but how? How do I draw the boundary when my body has forgotten how? The first step is to reclaim anger. Anger is not the enemy of empathy, it is its guardian. Anger says, This is my sacred ground, and you may not trespass. Without anger, love has no shield. Many of you have been taught that anger is destructive, sinful, unspiritual. You have buried it in your muscles, your stomach, your skin. But anger, when purified, is holy. It burns away falseness. It separates what is yours from what is not. If you can befriend your anger, you will begin to feel the natural edges of your being. The second step is to return what you carry. This can be done ritually, symbolically, somatically. When you feel the heaviness in your chest that belongs to another, breathe it out as if releasing smoke. Imagine placing it back into the hands of the one who owns it. Say, even silently, "This is not mine. I return it to you with compassion." Such gestures awaken the archetypal psyche. The unconscious responds to ritual more readily than to rational arguments. You may think it childish, but the soul does not speak in logic. It speaks in symbols. The third step is to inhabit your own body more fully. Many empaths live half a step outside themselves, scanning the environment, watching for danger, absorbing signals, but your true sanctuary is in your own flesh. Practices that anchor you breathing deeply into your belly, moving rhythmically, touching the earth with your bare feet. These are not trivial. They are ways of telling the unconscious, "I choose to live here, in this body, in this life, without embodiment." Your boundaries will always dissolve, yet even as I give you these steps, I must warn you, no method is absolute. What matters is not the technique, but the consciousness behind it. If you draw a boundary from fear, it will become a prison. If you draw it from resentment, it will become a weapon. But if you draw it from the archetype of self, from the recognition that each soul must walk its own path, then your boundary will shine like a sacred circle. Within that circle, love can flourish without distortion. Some of you may now feel the stirrings of guilt. You fear that to withdraw from the suffering of others is selfish. But I tell you, to live without boundaries is the greater selfishness, for then you impose your own unconscious need to rescue upon the other, and you deprive them of their own growth. True love allows the other to suffer what is necessary for their soul. To carry their suffering for them is to mistrust the wisdom of their destiny. I must also speak of projection. The empath is vulnerable to carrying the projections of others, especially of those who do not face their own shadows. The narcissist, the manipulator, the perpetual victim they find in the empath, the perfect canvas upon which to paint their disowned parts. And because you are porous, you receive these projections into your body. You live as if their hatred were your hatred, their fear, your fear, their shame, your shame. This is why discernment is essential. When you feel a sudden wave of emotion, pause and ask, "Does this belong to me? Whose voice speaks in my blood?" If you can ask this question with sincerity, the unconscious will begin to reveal the truth. The path of individuation is never isolation. We need each other. We are bound in the collective unconscious, but connection without boundary is fusion. And Fusion is regression. The child fuses with the mother, for it has not yet found its own ego. The adult must separate, or else remain an eternal child. Many empaths are still children, in this sense grown in years, but still fused to the emotions of others, unable to claim their own psychic territory. Individuation demands that you step into your own sovereignty, even if it means disappointing those who depend on your endless availability. Do you see now why the empath's body is such a sacred teacher? The body never lies. It never abandons the truth of your soul. Even when your mind betrays you, even when your ego insists upon denial, the body will hold the memory. It is both your prison and your liberation. If you listen, it will tell you where your boundaries are broken, where your truth has been compromised, where your soul longs to be free. To listen is the first step. To obey is the second, and to integrate that is the lifelong work of becoming whole. There is a paradox at the heart of the empath's existence. You long for union, yet you are called to separation. This paradox is not a mistake. It is the crucible of individuation itself. The psyche must hold opposites, must suffer the tension between them, until something new emerges. For the empath, the opposites are intimacy and boundary, compassion and selfhood, union and sovereignty. If you collapse into one pole, either total merging or total withdrawal, you betray the soul's demand for wholeness. The secret is to remain in the fire of paradox, to let the tension itself forge you into something greater than either pole. When I speak of boundary, do not think only of defense, think also of temple. A temple does not reject the world, it creates sacred space where encounter with the divine becomes possible. Your soma is such a temple. If its walls are crumbling, if its threshold is undefined, then any passing spirit may enter and disturb the rite. But if its foundation is firm, if its entrance is clear, then the divine presence can dwell within. A body without boundary is a desecrated temple. A body with boundary becomes a vessel for the self. I have told you before that the self is not the ego. The ego is the lantern you carry, flickering and fragile. The self is the sun that rises from the depths, illuminating all that you are. For the empath, the ego often tries to be savior, to heal and carry and fix. But the self asks something more radical, that you be whole. To be whole is not to be pure, not to be endlessly giving, not to be flawless in compassion. It is to contain both light and darkness, strength and weakness, anger and tenderness. The body becomes the canvas where this wholeness must be lived. Think again of dreams. A man dreams he is pursued by a pack of wolves. He runs endlessly, exhausted, until at last he falls. But when he turns, he sees the wolves circle him not to devour, but to guard. They are his instincts, his primal boundaries. The protectors he has denied. He wakes in tears, realizing he has spent years appeasing others, suppressing his own will, his chronic back pain, his endless fatigue. These were the wolves knocking. Once he welcomed them, his body began to breathe again. This is the task, to welcome the wolves, to reclaim the instincts that say no, to honor the rage that guards love, to listen to the stomach that refuses poison, to trust the skin that bristles at violation. You have been taught that sensitivity means fragility, but sensitivity is also ferocity. It is the hawk's sharp eye, the deer's twitching ear, the serpent's sudden strike. Your body remembers all these archetypes. They live in your blood. To deny them is to deny your wholeness. And yet, we must not romanticize the empath's suffering. To carry what is not yours is not noble, it is destructive. The unconscious does not reward endless self-betrayal, it punishes it. If you refuse to draw boundaries, life itself will draw them for you, often brutally, through illness, through broken relationships, through collapse. Individuation will not be denied. The only choice is whether you will participate consciously or be dragged unconsciously. Let us speak of shadow more deeply. For the empath, the shadow often contains the very qualities you despise: indifference, selfishness, cruelty, hardness. You see these in others and recoil, saying, I must never be like that. And so you overcompensate. You become endlessly giving, endlessly available. But the psyche is not fooled. The qualities you reject do not vanish. They remain in the shadow, pressing for recognition. Your body carries them until you dare to say, I too am capable of indifference. I too must sometimes be selfish. I too can be cruel when necessary. Only then does balance return. Do not misunderstand me. I do not tell you to become cruel, but to recognize cruelty as part of the human whole. If you deny it, it will act through you unconsciously. If you integrate it, it will become discernment, clarity, the sharp sword that cuts illusion. The same is true of selfishness. If denied, it becomes hidden exploitation, resentment, masquerading as love. If integrated, it becomes the healthy instinct to preserve your own life. The empath must integrate what seems opposite to empathy, or else empathy becomes distortion. The mystical traditions knew this long before psychology gave it language. In alchemy, the vessel must be sealed for transformation to occur. If the vessel leaks, the work is lost. You are that vessel. Without boundary, the opus cannot unfold. You will pour your soul endlessly into others' fires, and your own flame will wither. But when you seal the vessel with boundary, then the transformation begins. The prima materia, the raw chaos of your sensitivity, cooks in the heat of paradox, and from it emerges the gold of true compassion. Have you not felt this in glimpses? Those rare moments when you are both open and grounded, both loving and strong, both tender and fierce. In such moments, your body sings, There is no pain, no collapse, no heaviness. There is only presence. This is the somatic boundary in action. It is not rigid, not brittle, but alive, responsive, radiant. It allows love without violation, compassion without self-erasure. It is the state toward which the psyche drives you through dreams, through symptoms, through crisis. But beware the temptation of martyrdom. Many empaths secretly cling to suffering because it gives meaning. To be the one who carries, the one who heals, the one who suffers for others. This is intoxicating. It feeds the ego with a sense of specialness. But martyrdom without consciousness is not sacrifice, it is compulsion. True sacrifice is a choice offered from fullness, not demanded from emptiness. Your body knows the difference. When sacrifice is true, the body feels light, expansive, alive. When sacrifice is false, the body contracts, aches, collapses. Listen, and you will know there is also a collective dimension. The empath often serves as the carrier of the collective shadow in families, in communities, in cultures. The one who feels most deeply becomes the vessel for what others refuse to face. You may find yourself embodying the unspoken grief of your ancestors, the denied rage of your culture, the silenced shame of your community. This too shows up in the body, ancestral aches, inherited illnesses, inexplicable burdens. To recognize this is not to despair, but to awaken, for in carrying it consciously, you redeem it. You say, this is not mine alone. This is the cry of many, and I will no longer suffer it blindly. This recognition is sacred. It transforms personal pain into collective healing. But again, boundary is essential. You must know where your story ends and where the larger story begins. Without this knowledge, you drown in the collective sea. With it, you become a bridge, one who feels deeply, but who remains anchored in their own life. The collective does not need you to die for it. It needs you to live fully, to embody wholeness, to show what it means to be sensitive and strong. And so, I tell you, the empath's body remembers because it must. Memory is the path to wholeness. What the mind denies, the body preserves until you are ready to face it. This is not punishment, it is grace, for without the body's memory, you would wander endlessly in denial, severed from your truth. The body brings you back again and again to what is real. It is the most faithful of servants, even when it seems to betray you. To walk this path is not easy. It will require that you disappoint others, that you lose relationships, that you endure the accusations of being selfish, unkind, unloving. But remember, to live in denial is to betray your soul, and no relationship is worth that price. If another truly loves you, they will adjust to your boundary. If they do not, then their love was conditional upon your self-erasure. Better to know this truth than to live a lie. This is the somatic truth. The empath's body is not weak. It is not broken. It is not cursed. It is the sacred vessel of your individuation, the temple of your wholeness, the living parchment upon which the self writes its message. Honor it, listen to it, trust it, and in doing so, you will discover that what you thought was curse is initiation, what you thought was burden is calling, what you thought was sickness is the first trembling of your true healing. Now we arrive at the deeper mystery, the hidden chamber, where the empath's body and the archetypal soul meet. Everything you have heard until now prepares you for this descent. For the truth is not merely psychological, not merely about coping with pain or drawing firmer lines. The truth is mystical. Your body is the stage upon which the eternal drama of archetypes unfolds. When you ache, when you tremble, when you collapse beneath the weight of another, you are not only experiencing personal pain, you are enacting myth. The body remembers what the mind denies, because the unconscious is not content with intellectual admission. It wants incarnation. The archetypes demand flesh. They want to live in muscle and blood, in skin and breath. And so, when you refuse to see, they appear in your soma. This is why boundaries are holy. They are not mere psychological defenses, but rituals that sanctify your body as a vessel for the self rather than a dumping ground for projections. Think of the alchemist. He does not merely speak of transformation. He performs it in fire and matter. Lead must burn. Metals must fuse. Vapors must rise. In the same way, your psyche does not want theories, it wants embodiment. The empath's journey is alchemical. To take the raw matter of feeling, the prima materia of porous sensitivity, and through fire, through pressure, through paradox, to distill it into gold. That gold is not detachment, not numbness, but a radiant sensitivity that is sovereign, luminous, and whole. Let us turn again to myth, for myth is the language of the unconscious. Remember the tale of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descended into the underworld. She passed through 7 gates, and at each gate a piece of her adornment was stripped away: her crown, her necklace, her robe, for her weapons, until she stood naked before the Queen of the Dead. There she was, struck down, hung upon a hook like a carcass. Only later, through sacrifice and resurrection, did she rise again. This is the empath's path. You too must be stripped of false adornments, the mask of endless compassion, the robe of martyrdom, the crown of the Savior. You must stand naked, facing the truth of your own boundaries. Only then can you return to the world, not as a victim, but as one who has died to illusion and risen into wholeness. What then of the shadow that waits in the underworld? Many of you fear it still. You fear the anger that boils beneath your kindness, the selfishness that lurks beneath your giving, the violence that hides beneath your peace. But understand, the shadow is not your enemy. It is the guardian of your boundary. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim the instinct that says, I am, I live, I have the right to exist. Without it, you remain a ghost in your own life, a vessel for the demands of others. With it, you become a being of flesh and soul, grounded, fiery, whole. The body knows this long before the mind consents. This is why your stomach burns with acid when you swallow too many lies. This is why your skin erupts when you absorb too much shame. This is why your bones ache when you bow endlessly to the will of others. The body remembers the shadow even when the mind denies it. The body insists, there is anger here, there is selfishness here, there is violence here. To listen is not to become cruel, it is to become true. And what of dreams? They too are a somatic. When you dream of being chased, your heart pounds. When you dream of drowning, you wake gasping. When you dream of being pierced, your body tenses as if the wound were real. Dreams prove the unity of psyche and soma. They are not separate realms, they are one fabric, woven together. To deny the body is to deny the dream. To honor the body is to honor the psyche. The empath must learn this unity, or else remain divided forever, mind saying yes while body says no, lips smiling while stomach rise, hands healing while heart bleeds. So I tell you this, individuation is incarnation. It is not enough to know the truth. You must live it in your body. You must feel the boundary not as a theory, but as a muscle, a breath, a stance. Stand tall when you say no. Breathe deep when you release what is not yours. Let your feet root into the earth when you refuse manipulation. These gestures are not trivial. They are sacraments. Through them the self descends into matter, and the archetypes find home in your flesh. Perhaps you think this is too much. Perhaps you fear that if you truly set boundaries, you will lose love, lose community, lose purpose, and perhaps you will, the old bonds based on your self-erasure may indeed shatter. But know this, what is destroyed is illusion. What remains is truth. When you live in truth, new bonds will form bonds not of dependency, but of authenticity. You will find those who can meet you as an equal soul, not as a vessel for their unconscious needs, and in this, love will be reborn. Not the love of fusion, but the love of two whole beings meeting in freedom. This is the final wave of the sermon, to tell you that what you fear as loss is in truth liberation. The empath's body has carried too long. It has remembered what the mind denied because the soul demanded this hour, and now you are called to choose. Will you continue to suffer unconsciously, bearing the weight of what is not yours? Or will you listen, honor, and incarnate the wisdom of your body, reclaiming your sacred temple as your own? Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for others to understand. They may never. This is not their path. It is yours. To live as an empath with somatic boundaries is to walk a narrow path, often misunderstood, but it is also to embody the archetype of the healer in its truest form, not the one who sacrifices endlessly, but the one who heals by becoming whole. And wholeness heals not by effort, not by absorption, but by presence. Your presence, when whole, is enough. So let us close with this. Feel your body now. Feel the weight of your bones, the rhythm of your breath, the pulsing of your heart. These are not enemies. They are allies. They are the guardians of your soul's truth. They will never lie to you. Honor them. Listen to them. Obey them. And in so doing, you will find that the boundary you feared was not a wall, but a doorway into wholeness, into sovereignty, into the radiant mystery of the self that has waited always to incarnate fully in you